As the great Democratic Civil War turns up to a boil, it's up to Mike Bloomberg, is it really, to rescue the Democrats from their socialist fetish with Bernie Sanders? I can't believe any of this is going on, yet I'm witnessing it with my own eyes. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, there was a shock poll out this morning. I got so excited about these numbers because I love that blue-on-blue action. It just thrills me. Bernie Sanders has taken a big lead in national polls. NBC Marist, I think it was, 31% of Democrats now favor Bernie Sanders. He's taken a lead in Nevada, which is the next state to caucus here on Saturday. And in second place, 12 points behind, is former New York City mayor, former Republican, current billionaire, Mike Bloomberg, who has yet to face a single primary or caucus or debate. He will debate on Wednesday night of this week before Nevada. This is a thrill for me because I love watching the DNC go to war with half the Democratic base, or at least 31% of the Democratic base. And there was a thing I saw on Twitter today, and Scott, I'm going to direct this to you. As a thing that Dana Lash wrote, she said, "I see many on the left are trying to repurpose Bloomberg as the left's Trump." And she says this misses a huge detail. Say what you will about Trump, but he genuinely comes off as a guy who likes everybody and enjoys meeting people, whereas Bloomberg does not. He has a behavioral pattern of bigotry. The guy has a long pattern of looking down on those who are not of his socioeconomic status. Meanwhile, Trump likely scares his detail by wanting to pull over to greet first responders and brings burgers and fries on his travel and doesn't rhetorically throw shade on blue-collar workers, gun owners, etc. It's like the difference between Bill and Hillary Clinton, the difference between Trump and Mike Bloomberg. Is this guy really the savior that the establishment Democrats are looking for?
Well, in a perfect world, from the perspective of the Democrats, you might choose somebody else, but they really don't have that option. I mean, they don't have a lot of choices. Look around. So it's not like they have a Bill Clinton, so to speak, waiting in the wings who's going to suddenly step in. In fact, the Drudge Report was floating a rumor earlier this week before we recorded this that there might be a Bloomberg-Hillary Clinton pairing, that Mike would put Hillary on the ticket with him and, unite the forces or cross the streams or whatever
the forces
it is
of evil.
Yeah. So, but, it's not like they've got all kinds of great options. And right now, as we covered this week on Bill Whittle Now, our other show on this network, that they have a weird situation going, because essentially they have a guy who's not a Democrat, who's nominally independent, who's avowedly a socialist, who can actually capture the Democratic nomination by, in effect, winning sub 50% pluralities of the vote in every state that he goes to, because there are so many people in the race. And so if somebody doesn't drop out of this, then it could very well come down to a Mike Bloomberg versus Bernie Sanders. And then what do you do? Do you take the guy who actually knows how to run an organization, even if you don't care for the fact that he's a billionaire and he has no personality? Or do you take the guy who's an avowed socialist who's going to run your entire party into the ground and frankly accomplish nothing because he's never made a friend in Congress and he won't know how to get any legislation through? Yeah. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. And I think in that situation, you take Bloomberg.
Couldn't happen to a damn better bunch of people.
Well, see, that's the problem. To get to Bloomberg, the DNC might have to cheat. As they
what?
See, as they
no, it's unthinkable. It's unthinkable.
Sanders in 2016. Bill, you said last week or a couple of weeks ago on a segment we did about the general state of the race, that the Democrats are really in a fix here. That there's this major cleave in the party between what passes for their centrist wing and the radical progressive left wing. And if the Bernie bros feel robbed, they're not going to show up on election day. But if their guy wins the nomination, they get creamed on election day. So you're the DNC, you're Tom Perez and his little Clinton cronies and all the rest. Do you let this thing play out all the way to Milwaukee, take your lumps in November, and then try to recover in time for 2022 and 2024? Or do you put your finger on the scale and risk pissing off the Bernie bros so much that they decide to burn the mother down?
That's actually an extremely good question.
Thank you.
It seemed to me for the last year or over a year that they would come upon this reef and have to make the decision: do they want the centrist or they want the lunatic? And I had thought that this would be a choice between Bernie and Biden. You may remember Biden. We talked about him at one time in the past. I don't remember when. It was some guy who was apparently running. Yeah. But I'm beginning to think more and more every minute that it's going to be Bernie versus Bloomberg. Biden is just completely imploded. And it really, that's not a fair thing to say, because that implies that there was something on the inside to implode against. He was always a soap bubble, and it was all just hype. So nobody really wants to vote for Biden, and that's not news to anybody. Scott pointed out a week ago or 2 weeks ago or somebody pointed out that he's been in 37 primaries, something like that, in the course of his life. He's never won one of them. So if it comes down to if it was Steve. So if it comes down to Bloomberg versus Bernie, it gets even clearer for them and us, and even more destructive for them. These two Biden and Bernie are not entirely antithetical. You could be a Bernie supporter, and if you had the sense that you weren't being screwed by the DNC, you could conceivably rally to Biden in order to defeat Trump, and to some degree vice versa. But Bernie and Bloomberg are antithetical to each other. They may both be claiming to run for the Democratic Party, but they are antithetical to each other. One guy is saying no one should have more than anybody else. And the other guy is saying I've got $60 billion. You can't have it both ways. If you honestly think that the people if you think that the people who are putting the apparent support into Bloomberg, in other words, sensible Democrats who know that Bernie's the end of the party for them, if you think those people are going to vote for Bernie when they are already supporting a former Republican billionaire as their only hope against Bernie, then they're not going to go to Bernie. And if you think the Bernie supporters are going to vote for a former Republican who's got $60 billion after 20 years of talking about the 1% and rich old white males and all the rest of it, he's 1% of 1% of 1%. I don't see any way for them to get off of this reef at all. Zero. I don't see any chance for them to square the circle, Steve. I really don't. I don't know how they, this is what they get for having gone as far left as they've gone. There is nobody now that there's, and by the way, Bernie, who's leading, if their majority candidate is pulling 30% of the vote, if that's like the most popular guy, Scott's got a great point about that vote being split. But I mean, if he's getting 30% of the vote and his numbers are down in New Hampshire over what they were in 2016, I mean, they're really in trouble. So anyway, to get to your question, which is really a good question, do we put our fingers on the scale and force, let's just say for the sake of it, Bloomberg? Or do we let Bernie run and then take the consequences? I think if they're smart, and they usually aren't, then I would let Bernie run and just put this whole socialism dream and vision and nightmare into the ground for another 25, 30 years. If it were me, if I was in charge of the DNC, I don't see any way to beat Donald Trump anyway. If you go with Bloomberg, then the Bernie bros are going to be convinced that their socialism has never been given a chance to work, and they're going to keep at it forever. Bernie, I have no doubt if Bernie does not get the nomination, he will go independent. I don't doubt that for a second. I'm 90% sure that would happen. I got a good, strong feeling that would happen. Because look, he's not going to get another chance. He's not going to get to run in 2040, right? I mean, he was already there at Benjamin Harrison's inauguration. So for God's sake, I mean, So that's what you got. So I think he would. I think he would, out of a sense of obligation to his lunatic base, decide that it's now or never. And if he doesn't get the nomination, not only do I think he would go independent, I think his supporters would insist on it. If he does get the nomination, then finally we will have a chance for the American public to decide whether they want socialism or not. Whether they want 4 years of prosperity and enormous economic growth and all the rest of it, or whether they want to go with a guy who's never held a job, who wants to take all of your money and give it to people who vote for him. And I say it'd be best for the country to have that decision made now, because if we don't, then this socialist Bernie underground just continues to burn underground, and I'd like to see the whole thing, frankly, extinguished by the ballot.
By the way,
me
Steve,
too.
I don't know if you
please.
guys have seen this commercial that Bloomberg is running now, but Bloomberg is going head on into the Bernie bro culture and essentially wrapping that around Bernie Sanders' neck and making him wear it. And he shows a whole bunch of tweets with kind of dramatic music, tweets of all these nasty Bernie bros with their obscenities and everything, and blurred out. And then at the end, they have Bernie making some statement about how we're going to bring the party together and all that kind of stuff. And then on the screen it says, "Really?" And so
Awesome.
twice now, we've seen that from Bloomberg going head on into the Bernie bro culture. Bloomberg has also slapped back pretty vigorously at President Trump. So he's the only one so far, even though he's a kind of a bland personality, who at least through his media buys and his creative has been willing to go head on in a vigorous and aggressive way.
I have to say, I just have to add one thing talking about the bland personality. He's running his ads all over the place in California. And, there's like, how many times have you heard at the end of political speeches now or political ads for the last 25, 30 years? I'm Mike Bloomberg and I approve this message, right? This kind of thing. Even on that, he can't convince me. Even on that,
You think
I'm Mike
didn't pay for the
Bloomberg
message?
and I approve this message. I'm not entirely sure you did. It sounds like, It sounds like a guy who's a spokesman for the Mayonnaise Institute, the guy is just, he can't even sell his own belief in his own commercial. I'm Mike Bloomberg and I support this message and because it's time to bring change to America. Wow. Well, now, okay then. And the interesting thing is he's buying up all of the talent. That's what's interesting. He's created a vacuum so that nobody else is going to get the best political minds that the Democratic wish machine can put together. So now it is going to be Bernie versus Bloomberg because Bloomberg's bought all the airtime and all of the talent.
He's Paula Bolyard at PJ Media wrote a piece, I think, on Monday about the ground operation that Bloomberg is putting together in Ohio, where she lives. And he's hiring field workers at $6,000 a month, which is 3 times what any other campaign pays or can afford to pay. And at that rate, they're gonna try and put together a ground operation for Super Tuesday or whatever, and they're gonna find that there's nobody there to hire because Bloomberg has hired them all.
And I love Bloomberg. I think Bloomberg's great. I think Bloomberg's going to be a much better president than Donald Trump, and I think Bloomberg's going to win all of these things in a giant landslide. I think it's a guaranteed. And if there's anything I could do to help you, Mr. Bloomberg, you can rest assured you can have my full services.
Scott, I am so glad you mentioned that Bloomberg's running some negative ads against Sanders now, because I wrote about this morning in a column about this for PJ Media.
Maybe that's how I know about it.
Oh, no, because I didn't write about the negative ads. I hadn't seen one yet. I didn't know they were out there. Bloomberg, as I'm sure you're well aware, if you have a television or an internet connection, has been flooding the airwaves almost with nothing but positive ads, or at least not negative ads against the rival Democrats. They've been ads, I'm Mike Bloomberg and I'm getting my name out there and whatever. What we haven't seen is his digital operation putting together what I've been waiting to see, which are these micro-targeted negative ads against Bernie Sanders and any other rival who might pop his head up, because I think they might prove to be absolutely devastating. And if he's started this, I'm gonna have to get on the on that whole internet thing and see if I can find a couple of those, because I'm very curious to see what kind of blood he can draw. It'll be a lot of fun to watch.
You don't have to go looking for that. It'll come looking for you.
That said, let's talk a little bit about Mike Bloomberg and what he really thinks of Americans. I pulled up some headlines over the last couple of days that I'm going to share with you. Bloomberg said U.S. should deny treatment to old people with chronic disease. Black and Latino males
He's a Democrat.
don't know how to behave in the workplace. That's an exact quote from Mike Bloomberg. A flashback. Mike Bloomberg says farmers aren't smart enough to code. Michael Bloomberg built a $54 billion company that women who work there call a toxic, sexually charged nightmare for women. People say, this is another Bloomberg quote, people say, oh, we don't want to tax the poor, but raising taxes on them should have a bigger impact on their behavior for their own good, says Mike Bloomberg. So this newly minted Democrat has thrown shade, to borrow Dana Lash's phrase, on what do we have? Old people, blacks, Latinos, women, farmers, and the poor. all traditional Democratic constituencies. This is great stuff. I love this stuff. And there's a big difference here between Bloomberg and Trump. Dana kind of hinted at this with a comparison about Bill and Hillary, but that was really a comparison about their personalities. Trump is known as a fighter. So is Mike Bloomberg. But Trump doesn't punch down. Trump can't really punch up anymore because he's president of the United States, and there's nowhere really up from there to punch unless he wants to take on God. That said, he takes on other politicians. He takes on big name media figures, people who are supposed to have thick skins because they're in very public jobs and they're very highly paid. And it just comes with the territory. Mike Bloomberg punches down, and he does it with a really mean attitude. He's not punching up at Trump. He's not punching at Bernie Sanders, really. He's going after women and minorities and farmers and just real salt of the earth Americans. He's a mean, nasty guy, not a fighter. He's a bully. That's a big difference. And I think it's going to help Trump incredibly in November if Mike's able to buy his way to this nomination. And that's your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. If you like content like this, we need members like you. So click on over, become a member. We would love to have you on board. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.